Did you know using your browser in incognito mode doesn't actually protect your privacy? Take back your privacy with IPVanish VPN. Just one tap and all your data, passwords, communications, browsing history, and more will be instantly protected. IPVanish makes you virtually invisible online. Use IPVanish on all your devices, anytime you go online at home and especially on public Wi-Fi. Get IPVanish now for 70% off a yearly plan with this exclusive offer at ipvanish.com/audio.
Robots Radio. Games, lore, stories, community. Just press play. Welcome to the Fallout Lorecast, the podcast that explores the boundaries of our knowledge about the world of Fallout. Hey friends, welcome back to the Fallout Lorecast. This is Tom or Robots, and this is going to be a different kind of episode than I was planning on doing. I was going to get back to the whole list of all the different businesses and all of that, but something came up and it kind of made me feel like reacting. And hopefully this doesn't come across so much like old man yelling at the clouds or telling you to get off of his lawn, and more like an educational discussion around a topic that clearly a lot of people on the internet seem to misunderstand. What am I talking about here? Well, I'm talking about Mr. House. I keep getting comments on the videos that have been going up, and there was one that went up recently about all of you and your responses about who the worst villains were. And this is not just from that video, but other videos as well, where people seem to have this belief that Mr. House is not actually a villain. And sometimes that belief is also things like Kaiser is not a villain, or other characters who clearly have, in my mind, and based on literary and historical evidence in the definitions of villains, villain-like aspects. And yet people on the internet are pushing back against this. And in my mind, this is a very clear thing. They are very clearly villain characters. And yet it makes me wonder, why do so many people on the internet seem to not see that in these characters? What is actually going on here? And why are they not only saying that they're not villains, but often saying that they're actually heroes? What is going on? And I think I figured it out. So we're going to get into that. But first, before we get to it, just some caveats, some housekeeping, I guess, before we get in there. I know that this kind of topic may not feel like what I normally do. And normally what I do is I talk about the existence of the lore, and I talk about the history of the actual in-world games. And yet this seems important to me because one of the things that I also do on this channel and across the other podcasts that I have is I talk about things from a more academic level. I look at the philosophy or the morality or the history of a certain topic, and I bring those things to bear in our understanding of the world that we're engaging with here in order to shine light on the characters and their motivations and who they actually are underneath. So that's what I'm doing in this episode completely. That it's not so much about the history of the character and what the character did, because most of us understand that part of it. It's about why and how we should be understanding the character in relation to their actions in the world that they're in. And I'm pretty sure 99% of you, most of my audience at this point, is totally down for that conversation. But I can guarantee that this topic will turn some of you off, including some of you who seem to be taking too many red pills. And I know that's not the right way to use that analogy, but let's just go with that. This idea that, well, might makes right and authoritarianism seems to be the way to save humanity. Guess what? It's not, and it always fails. So here, let's get into this. This might be controversial, but I have a mountain of evidence as to why House is a villain from literary, historical, moral perspectives. Basically, any way you take a look at this, the evidence absolutely points to him being a villain. And one last thing before we get started. This is not a call to arms. This is not me trying to rally the troops and get you to push back against people online. And especially, this is not me telling you to go find these comments and drown them out with anger and aggression and anything like that. I'm always for civil conversation and conveying your ideas and debating ideas. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And doing it in a clever way isn't necessarily a bad thing to do, but don't be aggressive and don't shame people or attack them directly. And I say this as somebody who responded to one of these recently and made fun of the fact that they don't use actual punctuation, and that's why nobody's ever going to read their comments. But that was me being a little smarmy. This is not me saying you're a terrible human being and go jump off a cliff or anything like that. Okay, so I think you understand what I'm saying here. All right, let's get to it. Here we go. So before we get into the details about what House has done in the game, we need to understand what is a traditional understanding of a villain in literature and philosophy. And philosophy, of course, informs literature, and literature informs philosophy. The two go hand in hand throughout all of history, all of at least recorded history, which is where people start writing things down, which becomes literature, right? This is all connected. And what are some of the themes of villains throughout history? Well, let's take a look at them. First and foremost, I would define a villain as somebody who seeks control and domination of others, and not just influence over other people's. This is one of the things that happens, at least in our current day debates about these kinds of things, is somebody like me will say they seek to control and dominate people. And someone else will say, well, what's the harm in trying to influence somebody? I'm not saying influence. I'm saying control and domination, absolute control. Somebody like Sauron from The Lord of the Rings or Big Brother in 1984. These are the kinds of people who seek to control so thoroughly that nobody can stand up against them in any way. And anytime they do, they are completely either drowned out or more likely attacked for having a different perspective, not even having taken action against the person in control, but removed in whatever way is necessary. So keep that in mind, control and domination. Now, there's another piece to this. The next step, which is very similar, is something like utilitarian extremism. This is the concept that they justify morally questionable acts with the outcomes. You've probably heard the phrase before, the ends justifies the means. Now, this is something that is a little tricky. There are plenty of characters who are heroes who justify their actions according to the ends they're trying to achieve. For example, Captain America will punch a bunch of Nazis in the face in order to achieve freedom and democracy. The punching a bunch of Nazis in the face or shooting them or whatever is a violent action. Absolutely. And he's justifying that violent action according to the ends that it will gain for him and everybody else. So there is kind of a slippery slope here. And in modern day literature and movies and things like that, we are much, much more likely to come across what are traditionally anti-heroes than actual heroes. People who have villain-like qualities in the ways they go about things in order to justify the ends for some sort of better result. We've become more capable of understanding that in a world that's full of grays. I will absolutely agree with most of the audience that I've talked to that the world is not black and white. The world is not just these goody-goody superhero good guys and these evil black villains. There is a lot of gray in between. So don't take this as this is a quality that only villains have and therefore defines villains, but consider this more as this is something that every villain does. And oftentimes, the actual ends don't even justify the means. The ends don't really make sense. Take a character like Thanos, as we're talking about MCU stuff. He wanted to make sure that the population of the universe wasn't too high, that everybody would have a place to live and food to eat and those kinds of things. And so his solution was to remove half of the total population at all. You can see in this example that those ends don't really justify the means in any real sense. That's not the best solution to the problem. He's trying to solve a problem, sure, and that is definitely a problem that is worth considering and solving. But the means by which he does it is worse than the problem itself. Mr. House has a similar quality in that. He considers the future of the wasteland to be something that he has to orchestrate through his domination and control, through his control of technology, through his control of the decisions of the people around him. Either you agree with him or you don't. And if you don't, you are on the outs. And if you're on the outs, you're better off dead. He is willing to sacrifice, and sacrifice isn't even the right word here. He's willing to murder and kill anybody who disagrees with him in order to reach his goal of domination over the wasteland so that he can build a new society. But that society that he wants to build only has him as a figurehead. It only works if he is the person in charge, because he doesn't trust anyone else to make those decisions. And that's part of why he wants to live forever, is because the only way for this society to actually work is if he's at the top. And of course, that is impossible and also leads to other issues as well, but we'll get to those. All right, so let's talk about dehumanization. This is my third point here. When he considers working with other people, he doesn't see them as people. He sees them as tools or resources, a means for getting what he wants, or, in the case of people who stand against him, simply as obstacles. There are not humans. There is only House, and everyone else is not even a human being. They are a means to an end, or they are an obstacle that needs to be removed. And that is it. And you can see this in the way that he interacts with the courier in the game. When you get to communicate with him, he barely treats you like a person. You're more of an errand boy. And sure, you are a courier. That was your job, to basically be a delivery person for an item. But he doesn't treat you like an individual. And if you follow through with the things he wants you to do after you succeed in that, he barely regards you at all. You are no longer anybody worth even talking to, even though you accomplished all the things that he wanted. He kind of writes you off as just a tool for getting the job done. And once the job is done, he doesn't need to talk to you anymore. You're not really a person. Did you ever wonder why he relies on robots so much in order to patrol and protect his land, New Vegas? Well, it's because robots can be controlled and they don't have to be talked to. They don't have to be interacted with like people. In the case of robots, his domination is always 100%. Another common aspect of villains throughout history and literature and philosophy is hubris. This feeling that they are godlike, megalomania, narcissism, these kinds of qualities. They see themselves as the sole decision maker, the only one whose opinion counts. Nobody else in their sphere of influence actually is anywhere near as capable as they are. They have to do everything. And when things break down, they never take the blame. They always blame someone else. It's never their fault. What happens when a general speaks back against Darth Vader or tells him that, well, that plan's a bad idea, or the decision you made led to these bad results? Darth Vader doesn't go, okay, well, that's something that's worth considering. We'll need to make better decisions in the future. Thank you for informing me about that. No, Darth Vader force chokes them in order to silence them. And if he can't silence them, he kills them and he throws them away. And this works for a few reasons. First, it silences this person and anybody else in the room who would disagree with him. Secondly, it puts the blame on that individual. That individual is then immediately punished for doing the thing or being the bearer of bad news, or maybe they were the general who was supposed to carry out those orders. And it's never the orders from Darth Vader that are bad. It's the way the general carried them out that is bad. And so that person is punished. And third, it kills that person so that their insubordination is not something that he's ever going to have to deal with again. This level of hubris is something that Mr. House displays as well. He is the God Emperor of the Wasteland in his own mind. He is seeking immortality. He's the only one who can actually save everyone. And if parts of his plan don't work out right, well, that's not his fault. That's somebody else's. Now, of course, he doesn't use the phrase God Emperor ever, as far as I can recall, but he is making himself immortal. And what is an immortal leader who never cedes control to anybody else other than basically a god emperor at that point. And this leads to another point, and I hope you're noticing how all of these things kind of overlap with each other. Stasis versus freedom. So in many cases, villains are seeking some form of perfect order. But in order to achieve that, they sacrifice liberty. The only way to make sure that human beings can operate in a perfect society is to limit their options. Freedom creates the potential for chaos. It also creates the potential for unexpected results. So if you want society to work in a perfect, orderly way, then you have to remove freedom in order for that to happen. But of course, there is no perfect order because human beings are, from the top down, everybody who's involved. Every human being will seek some level of autonomy, some level of freedom. And on top of that, it doesn't matter how smart you are. Even the person at the top, Mr. House, or whoever happens to be in charge, will be imperfect. The system fundamentally will never be perfect. It will always have flaws. So even the goal, if we go back to this idea of the ends justifying the means, even the goal of a perfect order is flawed. It is something that can never be achieved. So it doesn't matter what means you go about to achieve that because you can't actually reach that goal. It's impossible. And the means of trying to achieve that is basically removing the freedom, the liberty of other people to make their decisions. Throughout all of history and philosophy and literature, there's always been this balance between freedom, autonomy, and control. Oftentimes you see in literature that the villain or the bad guy is associated with chaos, an instrument of chaos, a demonic, devil-like character who wants to throw a wrench in the plans of the good guys or God himself or something like that. But on a similar level, the villain is often an instrument of order, somebody who is overly controlling. This plays out in the Elder Scrolls. Oblivion just got a remake or a remaster, I believe is what they're actually calling it. And it's been released. And in the Oblivion remaster, you have an entire DLC that's devoted to Sheogorath, basically the Daedric Prince or godlike being of chaos. He is chaotic. He is completely unpredictable. But the story of Sheogorath is that he used to be Jiggalag, the Daedric Prince of Order. And that order was so stifling to the other Daedric princes that they grouped together in order to take him down and curse him to becoming the Daedric Prince of Chaos. Those two things are both equally threatening to human beings. Human beings exist somewhere in this balance between the two. We seek order, and oftentimes we fear chaos because we want things to be predictable. But when they're too confined, we're constricted and we lose our freedom. Every society has to design laws, and oftentimes those laws are a balance between seeking to reduce the options, the negative options of individuals, things like violence and crime and corruption, but also allowing most people to have the freedoms that they want in order to live their lives how they want. There's this balance between order and chaos. It's time for that spring reset. I'm taking a look at everything in my closet and figuring out that, oh no, this absolutely needs to go. And it's about time I replace things so that my clothes aren't older than my 15-year-old. Now you might think that they lasted that long because they were well made, but no, they're in terrible condition. Unlike the new jeans I just got from Quince. Jeans have always been my personal go-to because you can kind of wear them for lots of different things, but maybe they're not your thing. Maybe you're looking for, 100% European linen with insanely soft flow knit activewear fabric. It's definitely getting warmer, and their flow knit activewear is moisture wicking, anti-odor, and soft enough that you'll actually want to wear it every day. So pick out what you want. you can't go wrong because they have prices 50 to 60% less than similar brands. And like I said before, they are high quality. I continue to wear their clothes all the time, and I know that these new jeans are going to last me a lot better than the other things in my wardrobe. And on top of it, they look great. They're so comfortable. And I spent just as much on the jeans that I am now cleaning out of my wardrobe. So if you're looking for something better, just all around better, go check out Quince. So go do it right now. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/falloutlore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. Go to quince.com/falloutlore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/falloutlore.
Did you know using your browser in incognito mode doesn't actually protect your privacy? Take back your privacy with IPVanish VPN. Just one tap and all your data, passwords, communications, browsing history, and more will be instantly protected. IPVanish makes you virtually invisible online. Use IPVanish on all your devices, anytime you go online at home and especially on public Wi-Fi. Get IPVanish now for 70% off a yearly plan with this exclusive offer at ipvanish.com/audio.
If things are too free and open, then your freedom infringes on others. If things are too orderly, then the laws themselves infringe on your freedom. There's a balance point between the two. And in the case of somebody like Mr. House, he's seeking a level of control that defines and limits the freedoms of individuals underneath him in a stifling sort of way. If you take a broad look at history, the history of mankind goes from something like, and this is overly simplistic, so please just go with me here and understand that I'm clearly summing things up in a way that is a little bit overreaching, but just go with me here. We go from hunter-gatherer tribes, where individual tribes have basically control over small groups of people, several dozen people in a little tribe, in a little society. There's probably some figurehead at the top. They work more like they're in family groups. And for the most part, everyone pitches in, does what they need to do. They live their lives out, but their lives are based on connections to other individuals. General laws about, well, you don't kill somebody else. If you take from somebody else, then you return something to make up for it when you're caught. If you can't get along with your neighbors and your family, then you are ostracized and you're kicked out of the group. And you have to go survive on your own, which is very difficult, especially in the ancient world. Good luck. And then we have civilization. Civilization comes around and technology has advanced to the point where the powerful have learned that they can wield the majority of the power around the general population through the use of technology and ideology. The idea that they were given their power by some god, and if the people underneath them want to survive and prosper, then they need to do what the god wants them to do. They become the only conduit to that information. Do you see a trend here? That type of legal system, if even there was one in some of these ancient societies, which most of them did have legal systems, but it's a kind of broad definition of legal system. But that type of society is all about this one individual, this authoritarian individual who is defining for everyone else what the best solutions are to every problem, what the best decisions are for every law, for every judicial issue. Now imagine that scenario when you have a great leader, somebody like a philosopher king, like Plato or Aristotle would have discussed the concept of a philosopher king. In Plato's Republic, I believe it's in Republic, he discusses how the philosopher king would be the most ideal form of ruler, somebody who understands morality, somebody who's highly intelligent, who understands different perspectives and is able to make decisions for the benefit of the greater society, not just himself. But as soon as that person is replaced, let's say House achieves this, as soon as House is no longer around and somebody else ascends to that throne, good luck. If they're not as smart, if they have a different perspective, if they have no moral inclination, then it becomes hell for everybody underneath them. There's no long-term solution that works in authoritarianism. And this is something that from the beginnings of civilization through to today, we have constantly been dealing with. This is why places like in the United States or in Australia or in many, many other cultures across the world. At some point in their history, especially within the last 200 to 300 years, they started throwing off the shackles of authoritarianism, of kings and rulers and emperors, and things started progressing more towards republics and democracies. Now, of course, those systems are not perfect either, but they're better than authoritarian control, because when you have a leader who is bad for the people in an authoritarian system, the only way to get a new ruler is through nefarious means, murder, civil war, things like that. If you have a bad leader in a democratic system, at least you have the ability to vote them out. That's the main difference. What House is aspiring to here is authoritarian control. And sure, the NCR is not perfect. It's full of bureaucracy. It's full of individuals who are infighting, trying to take control of the system, and a lot of different people who have different perspectives on the way things need to be handled in the wasteland. And some want to go back to things pre-war that clearly didn't work and led to the demise and the Great War and all of that. Sure, those are all problems. But at least in a pseudo-democratic system like the NCR, a republic, you can debate those things. Those things can be discussed and debated. And when you have leadership that is not doing what is best for the people, there is a means with which to replace them. Somebody like House or Kaiser, if the people don't agree with what they're doing, they don't relinquish control unless it's through violent means. And that usually leads to some form of even worse results for the populace at large until eventually society settles down again. And it doesn't guarantee that the next person who takes power is going to be any better than the previous one. So all this is to say that the red pill takers out there who seem to think that we are at a point in the world and in our own history where authoritarians could come in and fix things, they're sorely mistaken. Even if you had the best individual who took over, took definite control and made decisions that made society better for the short term, a system that reverts to authoritarianism will eventually decay. The next leader is by no means going to be as functionally beneficial to society as the original. You see this throughout Roman history. Different rulers, different emperors had different outcomes, and you were just stuck with whoever was there when you were alive. And most likely, they weren't great. Most of them were terrible. And again, you can make the same argument that our own politicians aren't great or aren't wonderful. Absolutely. There are limitations in the system. The aristocracy still exists, but at least in a system where you have the ability to vote and you have an educated population, you have a means with which to replace those people or to continue to try to fix the system to make it even better. In the alternate option, we don't actually have any control. People have no real control over the way government is run. And sometimes it feels like that. I get it. But authoritarianism is absolutely not the solution to the problem. The solution to the problem is stepping up and becoming involved in the way things are handled, even at a local level, in order to inspire and make differences and then to work that out into the system. A quick fix does not exist. A slow, gradual improvement is what actually makes society better. All right, so I know I've been on my soapbox here, but let's go over just a few ways to kind of summarize this in the context of Mr. House. Some of you might be wondering, oh, okay, this is all really theoretical stuff, but what did Mr. House actually do that was so bad? Well, he seeks to annihilate the Brotherhood of Steel. He doesn't seek to reach out and build some sort of connection, some form of diplomacy. No, he seeks to eliminate them because they are a threat to his domination over technology. What else does he do? Well, he seeks to either destroy or control the raider groups of the wasteland. Now, you might think, okay, that's probably a good thing. And yes, if you have a group of people who are constantly threatening your safety, it makes sense to defend yourself. But there is a difference between defending yourself and seeking someone's extinction or domination over them. Those are two very different things. There is a line there. He also threatens and coerces the courier, you, the main character of the game. He constantly reminds you that your usefulness is conditional. You're not a person, you're a tool. You're not a partner, you are a means to an end. And then, if you get out of line, he threatens you with his Securitron army. What else does he do? Well, he creates a system that is not democratic, as we've discussed before. He has tight controls over information and surveillance. He not only controls what people are able to do through his set of laws and that sort of thing, he watches people. This not only limits their freedom, but it's invasive to their privacy. Is that the kind of system you wouldn't want to live in? That doesn't seem great to me. He also erases culture and history. This is another aspect of authoritarian and even fascist control. For example, when he brings in the chairman, the omertas, the White Glove Society, they lose their past identity in order to take on the roles that he wants them to have. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but that's good because they were raiders and that past identity wasn't very good. But no, get this. He gives them literal scripts about how to act and their guidelines for behavior in order to make them perfectly fit within society. Again, there's a line here. There's a line between here are my laws and here's how you fit within the laws. Be yourself, but follow the laws. And, oh, you actually have to play this role. You have to go by this script and you have to put on an act that fits this specific guideline. It's like hiring somebody to be an actor as opposed to hiring someone to work in your place and allowing them to be themselves while they get their work done. There are two very different things. In this version, they are having to become somebody completely different in order to fit into the way his society works. This is cultural sterilization. This is the erasing of cultures. This is one of the things that certain groups in different societies in our own world try to do when people immigrate to their societies. They say you have to let go of who you were and you have to be more like us or we're going to kick you out. But that loses the beauty and the diversity of those cultures. Here's another example that ties into all the stuff we've talked about before. He's manipulative and he doesn't actually plan to follow through with any of his agreements. A group like the NCR is only as beneficial to him as he can get them to do what he wants them to do. And as soon as they're no longer willing to do what he wants to do, he turns his back. He cuts the deal. He's not trustworthy. That is not an aspect of a good person. That sounds more like a villain to me. And finally, on the last point of trustworthiness and honesty, he sells this Securitron army of his as a peacekeeping force. He defines them as a necessary thing in order to make sure that New Vegas and eventually beyond is run lawfully and people are safe. But they're the opposite of that. A peacekeeping force can easily be turned into an enforcing military presence. They are there for domination, not peacekeeping. So I hope a look at all of this is helpful in understanding why somebody like Mr. House is a villain. Ultimately, it really just comes down to the argument that many people say about him working towards a better world. Well, guess what? You've been fooled. That is not a better world. That is Mr. House's world, where he is in control, where he benefits primarily from everything that he's doing. And sure, there may be peace if he wins out, but at what cost? Peace without freedom is not a world that anybody wants to live in. I hope that makes sense, and I hope this came across less like yelling at the clouds and more like an educational discussion about things. And if I sound a little bit, heated in this discussion, well, it's for good reason. I think that there are a significant percentage of the population who have forgotten this lesson, or it's been rewritten, or they've been convinced by people on the internet that these ideas no longer hold up. And they're wrong. This fundamentally is a thing that humanity has dealt with since the dawn of civilization. And the lesson that keeps getting taught to us is when we put our future in the hands of individual, strong people, as most of the time they're not even strong, they're just domineering and manipulative and convince people that they're strong, we all suffer. So there you go. A very different kind of episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want more of these types of episodes, definitely let me know. Jump on the Discord, comment on this episode, or wherever you can share your thoughts on this. The Patreon would be a good place as well. But let me know if you want this kind of, I don't know, external perspective on a character that puts them in the light of literature and philosophy and history and that kind of thing, then I'm happy to do more of these. I just want to make sure that I don't stray too much from what made this show popular with all of you to begin with. So you know me, I'm totally down for testing things out, but not to the detriment of losing this show. We'll be back to other more regular lore topics in the next future episodes. And I've got some other fun stuff coming up. I'm going to be at GCX 2025 in Orlando, Florida. This is at the Universal Resort on the 25th and 26th of July. And this is going to be fun because it's part of Fallout for Hope. There are a number of other creators who are going to be there, along with some big names. And I don't have anything locked down 100% yet, but I'm working on setting some stuff up to do some fun interviews or some fun show concept when I'm there, or maybe just get to go around and talk to a variety of different people. I'll have a plan as we get closer, but this is going to be a lot of fun. I will be out there in person. Again, that's GCX 2025. If you want to look this up. At the Universal Orlando Resort, July 25th and 26th. And it's going to be fun. This is a big event where there are lots of panels. There's games you can play live there. You can meet different people walking around. There's going to be cosplay. There's going to be a big Fallout group that is there hanging out and meeting and doing all this stuff. And it's particularly easy for me to go to because it's in Florida. So this is close to where I live, or at least sort of close to where I live. So I'll be there. Go check it out. GCX 2025. I'll put a link in the description for this episode. Also, thanks for all the support on Patreon. We have some new patrons to welcome. We've got Pedro B, Mrs. Adams, Andy Beam Imperator, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and John F. Thank you so much for the support. Welcome to the Patreon. I hope you're enjoying your ad-free episodes, or eventually you'll get t-shirts and stickers depending on the different tiers that you're at. And if you signed up at a Saltron level, then you can join us for future patron chats, which are always a blast. And I really enjoy hanging out with everybody each time. We do those every month. Also, got to shout out our Sentry Bot. Currently, Dusty Ray is our only Sentry Bot, but you get a shout out every week for that. Thanks for being here. Again, that's patreon.com/Fallout Lorecast. Also, if you leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts in the US, I'll be able to read that on a future episode. We don't have any new ones this week, but I would love for you to do that and let people know what you like about the show and how they should be involved with this community. Any of that stuff would be super awesome. Also, if you listen to this on other platforms or know friends or whatever, leaving reviews, sharing it with other people, all that stuff is super helpful. All right. Thanks for joining me for this different kind of episode. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Then the next time somebody responds that Mr. House or Kaiser or any of these villains in the series aren't really villains, remind them about how short-sighted it is to put an authoritarian in control and how that never really works out. I'll see you next time. To plug into everything else we're doing, check out robotsradio.net. Reach out to me on Twitter at robots_radio. Check out the Robots Radio Rocket Club, where you can join me and a bunch of our other creators creating your podcast, starting a new podcast, or helping your current podcast grow. There's more information about that on robotsradio.net as well. And you can always talk with us and the entire community, over 2,000 people on the Robots Radio Discord. Come join us. We'd love to chat with you. See you guys next time.